Greetings. In the light of our radiant one, I am Manka. In your remote past, the Tensor concept principles were known on your planet. They were known by those of our people who colonized and brought the life essence of the Adamic race to the earth. These same teachings were known widely by many of the ancients and by many on your planet during the ages of what you call Atlantis. The understanding of this awareness was responsible for many of the cultural and scientific triumphs of those times. Men and women on your planet were elevated by these illumined teachings to the threshold of the mental sphere and beheld the realms of the sages. The levels of being that destiny and the immortal awareness of man decreed that he should know. Thus, by knowing that the mind and the body are separate, but symbiotic with one another, it was demonstrated that to enslave one's body was insufficient unless the captive also surrendered his reason and his mind. Throughout the ages, the remnants of our teachings dwelt in the hidden places of your minds, proving the mind transcended the captivity of the body on those occasions when its powers were exercised. The true tensor-oriented man belongs to a most noble order of creation. The nations and races on your planet, which were blessed by these illumined ones, were fortunate indeed, for their names are remembered for their own sake. Those among you who do not comprehend the dignity of your mind and of its reasoning powers cannot properly be said to be alive. Your existence is experienced like one in a state of semi-coma. To those who make the effort to learn and to exercise your tremendous mental faculties, your mind bestows life, in that it reveals the dignity and purpose of life. Your preoccupation with the body and things material bestows a living death, in that these pursuits both numb and cloud those faculties of your mind which should be responsive to the enlivening impulses of creative thought and ennobling virtue. You, who are a sublime being with an infinite capacity for self-awareness, in an effort to be true to false standards, turn from your birthright of awareness and understanding without realizing the consequences, and pursue an illusionary physical and material existence. The precious span of your physical years are devoted to the pathetically futile effort to establish yourselves as an enduring power and presence in the physical realm of unenduring things. The divine awareness that you are man, a creature of both mind and spirit, fades like a memory as your awareness, trapped in the material bodies of men and women, vanishes from your objective minds as you focus your partly awakened mental faculties upon your day-to-day activities. In the lurid turmoil of your industrial, political, and commercial inferno, you writhe in self-inflicted agony and reach out into the material world, attempting to clutch and hold on to the phantoms of success and power. You remain ignorant of the cause of life, ignorant of the purpose of life, ignorant of what lies beyond the physical, and yet possessing within yourselves, through the use of your minds, the answer to it all. You are willing to sacrifice the beautiful, the true, and the good within and about you upon the blood-stained altars of your worldly ambition. The world of the mind, that beautiful garden of thought where the fraternity of man dwells, fades from your view. In its place rises an empire of stone and steel, a world in which men and women, potentially to become man, scurry to and fro in a desperate effort to experience life, and at the same time, the vast institution you have erected rumbles inevitably towards an unknown end. In that physical empire which you erect, you are convinced that you can outshine the kingdom of spirit, and yet everything turns to stone. In this, your science compounds your problems, for it is concerned solely with the classification of physical knowledge and an investigation of the temporal and illusionary parts of nature. Its so-called practical discoveries bind you ever more tightly with the bonds of physical limitation. Even the religions on your planet have become materialistic because the beauty and dignity of the spiritual belief of many is measured by piles of masonry, tracts of real estate, or by the ledger sheet. The mind of man connects heaven and earth like a mighty ladder, which the illumined of all ages have climbed into the living presence of reality. In the midst of the so-called learned men, there is rising up a new order of thinkers, which can only be described as the elite of the worldly wise men. These ones, astounded by their own intellect and that of others of their kind, consider themselves the great benefactors of mankind. These so-called gentlemen of letters have appointed themselves to be the final arbiters of all knowledge, both human and divine. Their declarations that the divine is a fabrication of primitive superstition, that there is no purpose discernible in the universe, that immortality is a popular figment of the imagination, and that an outstanding individual is but a fortuitous combination of genes and cells, are gratefully accepted by your people as the truth. You have embraced the worship of the intellect as a substitute for the knowing of the divine and of your mind. How do the lofty, dignified, ennobling concepts of man, of the mind of man, compare with the stunted and distorted products of the effete intellectuals and the stark reality of your present time? The evidence of your irrationality is all about you. In your adopted concept that reality is only that which can be detected or perceived through the senses of your physical bodies, you have drawn a veil between yourselves and reality. When you twisted off the blossom of the mind from the stem of existence and cast it away, you relegated your most precious possession to the trash heap. All over your planet, men and women are enslaved by the physical, emotional, and cultural systems of your time, and are crying out for the return of the vanished age of beauty and enlightenment. A few among you are becoming aware that your mindless so-called civilization in its present form is approaching its vanishing point. It is beginning to dawn on even the most comatose mentality that your cold, heartless pursuit of commercialism and material efficiency are impractical, and only the regaining of sanity through the use of your minds offers the opportunity for the expression of love and all that is worthwhile. All of you are seeking happiness, but you do not know in what direction to search. All of you, through the employment of the Tensor concept training of your minds, must learn that happiness crowns the mind's quest for understanding. Only when you realize that infinite goodness and infinite accomplishment are approached through your mental doorway will inner peace be assured. The Tensor concepts, once known on your planet, must rise again, for they alone can rend the veil which divides the world of cause from that of effect. This wisdom can reveal to your struggling humanity that greater and more glorious universe which is the true home of the spiritual and mental being called man. Your current philosophies have failed in that they regard thinking as simply an intellectual process. Materialistic thought is as useless a code of life as is commercialism itself. The power to use your mind to think true is that which we offer to your peoples. The great ones, the learned teachers who have existed on your planet in the past, were all personifications of this power. Those among you who exhibit more mental awareness and rationality than your neighbors are a little better than those around you. Those who are tensor-oriented and function on a still higher mental plane of rationality are the greatest powers among you. And those who choose to function on the lowest planes of mental accomplishment by choice or ignorance are little better than barbarians. Thus, comparative rational mental development is a true gauge of your individual evolutionary development. The tensor concepts were developed as a method whereby an individual could develop a rational mental awareness of reality and life at an accelerated rate, rather than waiting for the slower successive evolutions of this via physical evolution. This supreme awareness, attained by tensor-oriented individuals, is a limitless source of power. This level of attainment and awareness and understanding is the knowledge and employment of the divine essence of cause by the use of your mind. You alone can become man in the highest sense if you live by the rational use and guidance of your mind. What you live with and experience, you come to know. Consequently, man lives a threefold life: spiritual, etheric, mental, and physical, and is devoted to and completely permeated by his rationality. You must come to know that man's physical, emotional, and mental spiritual natures provide environments of opposite benefit or detriment to each other, depending on his degree of mental control of the balances maintained in this relationship. Since your physical bodies and your objective awareness are immersed in the irrational of your immediate physical environment, only the mind is capable of rational thought, since it is not influenced by the physical level of events. Therefore, in any given situation, right action, right feeling, and right interpretation by your physical brains are governed by right thoughts originating in your minds. Attaining the life level of man is possible only to those who develop their minds to harmonize their physical responses with their living in a material, physical level of events. In order to become man, you must realize that none can attain to the highest in the experience called life until first he or she has attained to the highest in knowing. Man is the natural outgrowth of this awareness. Just as an intense physical existence emphasizes the importance of physical things, so the rational use of your minds ushers your awareness into the most elevated and noble of all spheres, that of thought and the rational world of man. In your present world, which is primarily concerned with the accomplishment of extremes of material activity, the tensor-oriented man represents a balancing factor, capable of controlling and guiding your planet's evolutionary growth. The acquiring of such mental techniques is directly in proportion to your efforts to learn them. In the past, great civilizations on your planet used another method and vital factor, which entered into the production of rational minds, but which is entirely beyond the comprehension of your modern intellects, namely, the initiation of one into that known as the mystery schools. Whenever one among you demonstrated superior mental and spiritual fitness, he or she was accepted into a group of the learned, where they shared in the priceless heritage of the true Tensor teachings preserved from generation to generation. This heritage of the truth and the use of the mind is the matchless treasure of the ages, and each such advanced thinker admitted to these groups in turn made their individual contribution to the essential store of knowledge. Our great hope for your peoples is your rediscovery of the worlds of the mind. For all your current sorrows result from your neglect of this faculty. Those among you who sense even a part of the dignity of life and of man cannot help but realize the shallowness apparent in the activities of your present existence and age. Down through the ages on your planet, men have ruthlessly destroyed the knowledge of the past. Often they obliterated those records of human thought by which life can be intelligently directed. What was knowledge, truth, beauty, love, idealism of thought to such men as these, who desired to control an infinitesimal spot in the cosmos, merely to satisfy some personal whim or urge, to uproot the universe, though knowing well that in a few short years they would leave it all as an old cause beckoning for new contention. Competition, conflict, and war, the essence of irrationality, still lives on in the hearts of men and women on your planet. It cannot depart until your love affair with the irrational is ended. Armed with the science you have developed and its destructive agencies, your civilization will continue this suicidal pursuit until the dawn of reason prevails. Now, from the stars, come men and women, schooled in the use of the mind, to help you learn the techniques and dimensions of your minds, so that you can emerge to build and nourish a great new age. Foreseeing the needs of that coming day, when the earth will be renewed, the minds of man are reaching forth to you now, so that in your new world will be incorporated the noblest and finest of all thought. It is a basic law of the universe and of man that the sum of previous experience shall be the foundation of each new existence and order of life. The great treasures of the mind will be preserved, while that which is false will be allowed to perish. In your world today, there are two basic kinds of ignorance, simple and complex. Simple ignorance is merely a lack of knowledge and is common to all life forms existing after the creation of the cosmos. However, this type of simple ignorance is an ever-active agent, urging the mind and awareness onward to the possession of knowledge. From this virginal state of unawareness grows the desire to become aware, with its resultant improvement in the life form's mental condition. Your intellect is ever surrounded by forms of existence beyond the perception of your mind's partially developed awareness. In your material, physical world of objects and events not understood is a never-failing source of mental stimulus. Thus, nature and evolution eventually provide wisdom with each life experience, which result from one's efforts to cope rationally with that life's events. Only in the last analysis is the ultimate cause, or that which you now acknowledge as the Creator, wise and good. Knowledge, virtue, and utility are one with the innate nature of good. Knowledge is a condition of knowing brought about by the use of your mind. Virtue, as we define it, is a condition of being, and utility a condition of doing. Therefore, you may consider that wisdom is associated with mental completeness and maturity. It is evident that such a state as we describe can only exist in the whole, for that which is less than the whole cannot possess the fullness of the all. No part of creation is complete by itself. Therefore, each part is imperfect to the extent that it falls short of the awareness of its entirety. Where incompleteness exists, there also must ignorance dwell to some degree. While it is essential that each part or life form be capable of knowing itself as individual awareness, it remains for the experiences of each life to bring awareness of its relationship with all in the cosmos. In time, therefore, the isolated awareness of each individual fragment is reunited to become complete awareness. Then, and only then, is the condition of complete awareness an absolute reality. Then all life forms are relatively ignorant, yet relatively wise. A microscope reveals to you on Earth your significance in the cosmos, your telescopes, your insignificance. Through eternities of life experiences, men and women on your planet are gradually increasing in wisdom and understanding. Under nature's control, this would require countless centuries at your present rate of progress. Now, because the timetable of events concerning your planet's evolution is accelerating, nature's method can no longer be tolerated. Therefore, the tensor concepts are once again presented to your minds so that your ever-expanding awareness can include more of the external universe within that which is your mind. Even now, in your present state of imperfection, it is dawning upon you that you can never be really happy until you are perfect in mind and spirit. And that of all of the faculties contributing to your self-perfection, none is equal in importance to your rational mind. Through the darkness of ignorance, only the illumined mind can see, and it must lead the awareness of one's self into the perfect light of unity. Since we have now discussed simple ignorance and potency in nature's evolutionary growth of awareness, we will now discuss the other form, complex ignorance, which is a far more subtle and dangerous type. Complex ignorance may be briefly defined as ignorance of ignorance. Your civilizations returned to primitive states, and you began the worship of nature, its elements, and other related fetishes. Men and women dwelt in a world filled with wonders they failed to understand. Now you have erected great cities on ancestral lands, and in your present time you no longer regard yourselves as primitives. The spirit of wonder and awe that you exhibited and felt while you were living a primitive existence have been replaced by a sense of sophistication. In your present time, men and women worship their accomplishments and relegate the knowledge of space and time to the background of their awareness, or disregard such thoughts entirely. You have made a fetish of civilization, as you call it, and are overwhelmed by your fabrications of stone and steel. Your gods are now ones of your own fashioning. Men and women have forgotten how infinitesimal, how impermanent, and how ignorant they really are. Many are egotistically convinced that the planet Earth is the most permanent and important of all heavenly spheres, and that the gods seated on their starry thrones must be fascinated by the momentous events taking place on your celestial ant-hill of chaos. From age to age, men have toiled on your earth to build cities so that they could play at being gods and rule over these cities with pomp and power. It is as though rich treasuries and millions of docile citizens could somehow elevate these men above the dignity of their own thoughts and make their civilized accomplishments outshine the distant stars. As your tiny planet proceeds along its orbit in space, it carries some billions of men and women who live and die oblivious to the magnificent existence lying beyond their terrestrial globe. Measured by the infinities of time and space, what are your captains of industry or lords of finance? If one of these were to rise until they ruled your entire planet, what would they be but petty despots seated on a grain of cosmic dust? Your mind can reveal to you your kinship with man and the cosmos. It can reveal that you are a brother to the stars which fill the heavens. It can lift you from being a taxpayer on a whirling atom of a planet to becoming man, a citizen of the universe. It can teach you that even though your bodies remain on earth, of which they are a part, that there is a power and a spirit and an awareness of self with which you may become at one with the symphony of the Creator. Ignorance of ignorance, then, is that self-satisfied state of unawareness in which men and women, knowing nothing outside the limited area of their physical senses, proclaim that there is nothing beyond the boundaries of their perceptions. He who knows of no life or experience but the physical is merely ignorant. But he who declares physical life to be all-important and elevates that belief to a position of supreme reality, such a one is ignorant of his own ignorance. If the infinite had not desired men to become wise, you would not possess a mind that is perceptive and can grasp in part at least the immensity of the outer universe. Man calls from the stars to men, so that they may be comrades together in their use of a questing mind. Men are called to join a fraternity of thought, so that their awareness may be expanded. Your mind invites you to leave the sorrow of ignorance and your despair of a fraudulent existence. Your minds, properly trained and developed, would lead you into the broad, calm vistas of truth. For the mental level of awareness is a land of peace, where those finer qualities inherent within man are given opportunity for expression and manifestation. Here you would come to know the wonders and the secrets of real being. Your existence, bathed in the radiant light of understanding, would become a wonderful and beautiful reality. From all the reaches of space, a mighty anthem of joy would reach out to embrace your being, and in the radiant knowledge gained by your mind would be revealed the purpose of existence and the wisdom and goodness of the creative essence. In these realms of thought and of mind, your yearning hearts would find that true companionship which issues forth from the Creator. Therefore, following the path pointed out by your mind, you will seek after truth and ultimately attain to the summit of wisdom. In gazing down from the mental spheres, you will behold the panorama of life spread before you. The cities and the plains of your planet will be but tiny specks, and the horizon on every hand will be cleared of the gray haze of the unknown. Then will your mind realize that wisdom lies in the scope of one's vision, and that it increases in comparison to the vistas presented to your thoughts. Then your thoughts will lift heavenward. Streets will be lost in cities, cities in nations, and nations in continents, and continents in the earth, and the earth in space, and space in infinity, until at last there remains but two things: your mind and the oneness of our Radiant One. While your mind is intimately linked to your physical body, which in turn mingles with the heedless throngs, it is difficult for you to conceive of man inhabiting a world of his own, a world which he has discovered by lifting himself into communion with the awareness level of thought. You will find that man may live two lives. One, a struggle from birth to death, its span measured by men's creation, time. And you would be right in calling this the unheeding life. The other life is from your mental realization to infinity. It begins with understanding. Its duration is forever.
Greetings in the light of our Radiant One. I am Hatan. It has been a long period of time since I have had the privilege of extending my thoughts to your minds, and if I may be allowed the privilege of perhaps submitting a few of my comments for your inspection, I would be greatly pleased. I would share my thoughts with all on a topic which many upon your planet have given a great deal of thought to. We have spoken many times in your past about the subject you have called love, and it has been most rewarding to witness your thoughts as you have pursued the various meanings brought to your consciousness. Of course, there remains a vast amount of thought still available on this topic. However, at this time, I should like to direct your thoughts into a somewhat different avenue. Let us think about that most inclusive subject called the light. The light, as it has been described in many of the texts upon your world, and in conversations and discussions, has seemed to be possessed of many exceptional qualities. We have noted upon many occasions your various expressions concerning the light of the Radiant One, the light of the divine, the light of the Creator, or whatever other descriptive sources that you visualize the light emanating from. As you can see, there is a great deal of confusion about this subject of the light. Perhaps I may somehow increase your awareness regarding this. When you employ the term the light, perhaps you could visualize it in this way. The light is of no specific color, and yet it is all colors. Whether it be the visualization of the pure white radiance, or however you do visualize it. Its color qualities are very incidental. But you are calling forth, and knowingly or not, invoking the most powerful emanation in creation. In your holy works, I have observed a reference. It is this: in the beginning, there was the Word. The Word, my brothers and sisters, was the light of our radiant one, the most encompassing emanation in all creation. The light may be employed in every manner that is conceivable to your mind, and for whatever purposes you envision. You may call forth the light for the protection of your beings and persons, as well as for your loved ones and your possessions. You have invoked the light on numerous occasions to condition the very environment in which you exist. I believe that on each such occasion, your employment of this force and essence has always produced the desired results. The reason I bring this topic, the light of the divine radiant essence, into your awareness on this occasion, is that in your pursuit and study and evaluation of that which presently you shall encounter, you will have great need to employ this light. I would submit for your consideration that upon each and every occasion where you are either thinking or considering or executing any form of thought, word, or deed, that you employ the light, that this light be employed in such a way as to use it to clarify your thinking. I believe you will sense the reasons for this. How many of you have thought of invoking and employing the light in your daily activities and thinking? My brothers and sisters, this is perhaps the most important aspect and usage of the light. For those thoughts which course through your minds, which result in some form of action, should always be enveloped and permeated by this light. You use a statement in many of your thought processes which seems to be a type of safeguard when you state, and I use your words, "Thy will be done." What you are implying, but not stating correctly, is that the light will function as it is intended. I merely submit these thoughts to help clarify your thinking, to make them more responsive and at one with the light, to perhaps clear away some of the clouds of confusion which unfortunately obscure much of the thinking upon your planet, as well as that observed in your minds. With your employment of the light, many subtle qualities are to be experienced. I have spoken on numerous occasions about the topic called love. Can any among you visualize the magnitude of the love inherent in this light? Can you visualize or comprehend this subtle quality as it permeates your beings and your thoughts as you employ the light? Can you not be aware and realize that a new and subtle quality of this very essence will become at one with all your thought processes? Would not this light then illuminate the darkness of the outermost reaches of your minds? Could not your thoughts, as well as your actions, be more readily defined by the illumination of this light? Would not all that is experienced be that much clearer in your perceptions? It is unfortunate that, like so many of the terms in your language, that this word, the light, has been bantered about so often and misused. For people of earth, my brothers and sisters, had the realization permeated your awareness of the nature of that which you were discussing, and truly been born into the essence of your awareness, you would have been profoundly influenced in even the manner in which you have treated this word. In those days which lie ahead in your individual futures, would not the very magnificence of the use of the light bring about a new condition of being as it is employed? You have heard from another brother that it was a peculiar type of light which emanated from your planetary sun, which brought about the malfunctioning of natural laws upon your world. And it was only by the correct application of a light substance of different and enhanced quality that this other form of radiation could be nullified. If, my brothers and sisters, the light has such potentials in its employment, do you wish to continue using it so casually? Would you not rather include it in its true functionings in your everyday activities? You need not be concerned as to the functionings of the light, for the light, my brothers and sisters, needs merely to be called forth. Its functionings are inherent in itself. The light will always operate and function in the correct manner. It cannot be abused in any way. A negative quality of the light does not exist, for it could not then be the light, but would be some other emanation instead. We have noted your great yearnings to achieve a more refined degree of awareness. You have noted that I have not used the term elevated, but merely the term a more refined. Consider these thoughts for your yearnings. For this you approach the path that is illuminated by the light. Should you choose to traverse a path that is different, that is, of course, your decision. But I, knowing of the innermost yearnings of those upon your planet, cannot conceive of any direction or pursuit that you would desire other than that which is true, that which is. I have submitted these thoughts with your permission to illumine your thought processes with this light that we have spoken of. For my beloved ones, you have great need to employ this light. As the planet upon which you reside at this time passes through the great period of transition, use the light so wisely, employ it often. Your beings will become all the more radiant by this usage. And perhaps, my brothers and sisters, that which you anticipate as a period of great difficulty will merely become a period of great illumination. It all depends, does it not, on how you appraise it. Perhaps, my beloved, one of the major problems upon your earth is that many do not make the effort to appraise that which is occurring in a light different from that with which they are accustomed. It does not require any great degree of effort to transcend those patterns of thinking in which you have been caught up, and to, through the use and the employment of this light, see the way more clearly. I trust that these concepts which I have submitted find their way into the innermost core of your being and its awareness. For when I use this term, my beloved, it is a term which describes most adequately the scope of my affection for those of your planet who share these thoughts, as well as all who will eventually come to know them. I leave you now, my beloved, with these thoughts fresh in your awareness. Tend them with great care and love, and you shall see them blossom forth into the reality of a new form of creation, a creation that will be in perfect harmony with that which you are to become. I am most pleased that you have allowed me the privilege of imparting these thoughts from one who is perhaps somewhat older in his thinking. It is always our great privilege to come within the emanations of the light that each of you represent. I am most humbled, and it is with love that I depart now. In doing so, may I be among the first to invoke this light, that it become ever more magnified in your being and awareness. It has been my privilege to share these thoughts. In the light of our Radiant One, I depart now. Adonai, my brothers and sisters of earth, I am Hatan, Adonai. Of our Radiant One, I am Zoltek. I have been responsible for presenting similar thoughts to these on the tensor concepts to various ones upon your world. I refer to that known to you as the tensor equations, our tensor equations and concepts. And if learned and used by your people, these would open up entire new vistas in the control of matter and environment, and increase your individual degree of awareness. In the application of the tensor equations and concepts, not only could your environment be transformed in a matter of moments, but you as individuals would know a new sense of freedom, a new concept of awareness that your minds do not even grasp at this moment. I will explain the term tensor as meaning the degree of thought potential present in that called the synapses of your brains, and the term equation or concept as the thought process and method necessary to create new synaptical junctions within that organ you term the brain. Therefore, tensor equations and concepts have to do with increasing the activity of the brain by providing new synaptical connections to heretofore unused areas of this organ. My brothers and sisters of earth, there remains precious little time to determine whether or not it is within your ability to grasp these fundamental concepts. This is not as difficult as you might believe. It requires that you make an effort to think, an effort we have noted many of your people greet with little enthusiasm. The mind is capable of unlimited potential, not only in the fields of expression and creativity, but in the control of all of the forces of physical matter. It will be our great privilege in these and in future of your communications to reveal to those who have the true desire to learn additional of our tensor equations and concepts. We will attempt to present the knowledge that is required, but please understand that knowledge is only information, and unless some among you make the attempt to correlate the information and apply it, all of this knowledge will not do very much good. You would merely be like little children, delighted with a few tantalizing new thoughts. The first of those equations and concepts I would bring to your attention is this. Tensor equations are a discipline, not a philosophy. Tensor-oriented philosophies are possible, just as many geometrical systems can be developed. Possibly the most important requirement of your civilization is the development of a tensor-oriented economy. It can be stated categorically that such a system has not existed upon your planet to date. The opportunity therefore exists for bold and imaginative men and women of your evolution to create a system which will free mankind from war, poverty, and tension. To do this, it will be necessary for you to take control of the planet away from those who identify. Children, immature adults, and animals identify. Whenever a person reacts to a new and changing situation as if it were an old and unchanging one, he or she is said to be identifying. Such an approach to life is Aristotelian. The doctrine of deductive reasoning, the tendency to emphasize the empirical. To be scientific rather than metaphysical. Due to your environment, it is most difficult for you not to identify. But this we hope will soon be rectified. Identifying is a characteristic which must be conditioned out of your consciousness. It is a distinct barrier to your future development. Identifying may be expressed as meaning many different things. The most important, however, is to associate with. If I mention a personality, you immediately associate this with an individual, or, to be more explicit, a name. Identifying is truly the stage where a pupil must learn to progress even further. If you find yourself committing this process, you will also henceforth realize its error. The second concept I would present is as follows. In order to be a sane and adjusted human being, an individual must realize that he cannot know all there is to know. It is essential that the understanding of this limitation be realized, not only intellectually, but that the understanding be an ordered and conditioned process, unconscious as well as conscious. It is essential that these conditioned processes be instilled in a retentive mind. Sight must never be lost of the ultimate goal of conditioned reactions. This conditioning is essential to the balanced pursuit of knowledge of the nature of matter and of life. The third concept I would present for your appraisal is this. For the sake of sanity, an individual should learn to remove the blockages in his own nervous system. Blockages are semantic disturbances which inhibit a total evaluated response. Blockages can be eliminated by the proper use of thalamocortical delayed action. It must be understood that the human nervous system is potentially superior to that of any animal. For balanced development, then, it is necessary for an individual to orient himself to the world of reality in which he resides. There are methods of learning by which this can be accomplished. Tensor equations are one of these, and can also enable the individual to align himself with life in the following ways: to intuitively anticipate the future, to make use of his abilities and capabilities to the utmost, to suit his behavior to his environment. The fourth concept I would bring to your attention is this. Human nervous systems are structurally similar one to the other, but are never exactly the same. Any human nervous system is affected by events, verbal and nonverbal. An event that is happening affects the body and the mind as a whole. For the sake of sanity, then, remember, first is the event, the initial stimulus. Second is the nervous impact of the event via the senses. Third is the emotional reaction based upon the past experiences of the individual. Fourth comes the verbal reaction. Most individuals, however, identify the first and the fourth steps, and are not even aware that the second and third exist. My brothers and sisters, because children and childlike grown-ups are incapable of refined discrimination, many experiences shock their nervous systems so violently that your psychiatrists have evolved a special word for the results. This is called trauma. And carried over into later years, these traumas can so tangle an individual that unsanity, that which is called neurosis, or even insanity, that which is called psychosis, can result. The human nervous system is uniquely capable of unlimited training, but the method is the determining factor. The Tensor method of relaxing is based on vision, the principle that a relaxed eye sees best. The normal eye is relaxed when it shifts steadily. When, for any reason, an eye capable of good vision begins to stare, the image blurs. Unlike a camera, the eye sees clearly only on the instant following the relaxing shift. Now I would present for you an automatic way to cause that organ known as your brain to relax. An obvious approach which I would suggest would be the associative relaxation of the surrounding tissue. You now consciously set about relaxing blood vessels of the cortex, the thalamus, and the subcortex where the embryo is located. By association, then, all cells around the blood vessels will also automatically relax. Now, if you will follow these simple instructions, this is an exercise for your eyes. Relax. Look. Relax. Look. Relax. Look. Relax. Look. It will be determined by your individual awareness how soon you achieve a state of relaxation. After the method is grasped, this little exercise may be discarded. This is, of course, only preliminary to the simple but effective way of inducing the thalamic cortical pause. And after skill is obtained, this entire method is comprehended by your mind and takes but a fraction of a second to put into action. Practice, however, is necessary. Now to the method used to accomplish the thalamic cortical pause. The thought is this: I am relaxing. All stimuli are making the full circuit of my nervous system along my spinal column up to the thalamus, then through the thalamus and up to the cortex, then through the cortex, and then and only then back through the thalamus and down into my nervous system. Always I am aware consciously of the stimulus moving up to and through my cortex. This is the key. This is the difference between the tensor-oriented and the animal mind. The thalamus, the seat of emotion, and the cortex, the seat of discrimination, become integrated and balanced in a warm and wonderful relationship. Emotions are not done away with, but made richer and more relaxed by association with that part of the mind, the cortex. And this savors unnumbered subtle differences in the flow of feeling. Remember then this: the stimulus is now going through my cortex. I am thinking and feeling, not just feeling. And so, my brothers and sisters, can be achieved what we have termed the cortical pause. The fifth concept I would bring to your attention is as follows. Remember, in any statement about an object or an event, an individual is abstracting a few of its characteristics. If one says a chair is brown, he should mean that brownness is only one of its qualities. And as he speaks, he should also be aware of the chair's many other qualities. Therefore, consciousness of abstracting constitutes one of the main differences between a person who is tensor-oriented and one who is not. I will state the map is not the territory. The word is not the thing described. Whenever a map is confused with the territory, a semantic disturbance develops in one's organism. These disturbances continue until the individual can discriminate and determine the limitations of the map. Time, space, energy are all manifestations of primary force. Remember then, first exists space. Secondly exists time. Third exists energy. Time is one axis, space another, and energy the third. Manifestation then proceeds in the manner described, and we arrive at the very core of being. Regarding time, All events, past, present, and future, exist together. They do not flash into being in some mythical present, and then flash out of existence again when the present becomes the past. They only seem to, because the observer's consciousness is moving along them and hits them only one at a time. Those additional faculties in the mechanism of your brain can sense all of this and act on it directly, while the gray matter, the cortex of your brains, is blinded to it by your pre-scientific ways of looking at things. These, my brothers and sisters, constitute our preliminary comments regarding your tensor concepts and equations. In future of our discussions, we will present many other facets of information on these concepts which will be of value to your peoples. I am Soltek. Adonai, my brothers. Adonai. Greetings in the light of our Radiant One. I am Cortan. For a great period of time, we have engaged in a mighty effort, that of the dissemination of certain of our thought concepts to your people. Those involved with the Solar Cross have been instrumental in helping in this matter. We have devoted considerable time in the readying of these thoughts so that your minds could understand them and have little difficulty grasping their import. I would remind you that in your past, our brother Soltek presented certain of our tensor equations. We have noted that in one of them, a certain phrase has caused some confusion in your minds. I would take this opportunity to clarify its meaning. The confusing statement was this: the map is not the territory. Let us take a moment to examine that statement. The easy interpretation is that one must not confuse the symbol, which the map is, with the actual territory being described by the map. That conclusion is correct, but let us carry it one step further. You will notice that I used the term symbol. I will now state that particular phrase in a different manner, which may reveal another of its facets to your awareness. It is this: the symbol is likened to the territory that it describes. The map, therefore, is a very crude symbol. Let us now consider a refined and accurate symbol. Let us take, for example, a photograph of the territory. Now are we correct in stating that the photograph is a symbol of the territory? And what do we mean by the term is? In your thoughts, it is easy to glimpse confused meanings because of semantic word connotations, past experiences, and certain interpretations you are acquainted with. When we use the term is in your language, Are we not saying likened to? After all, if a symbol has the attributes, the characteristics, captures the image, and is reasonable and accurate, then truly we have a symbol that does represent the territory on the thought level. In our observations of many fields of thought and human behavior upon your world, we have noted that there are those among your people who employ symbols in their daily living without being aware of it. None of them realize their proximity to a doorway into another dimension. We speak now in terms of the employment of symbols. For this purpose, symbols can be endowed with many different characteristics. The mind merely assigns the ones needed. Therefore, symbols play an important part in the transition of thought from the levels of thought alone into that which you call the material world. Symbols act as a conversion device whereby a thought can manifest itself in the physical world. They are an operative tool that the mind employs. The mind creates a thought. A symbol becomes the tool employed by the mind to translate the thought into the physical realms at some point in time. Conversely, anything that exists in the physical can be translated through the means of a symbol back into the realms of thought. This is not overly complex. In fact, it is quite simple. The point I wish to impress you with is this. It is the pattern of relationships that you are dealing with that is important. When using symbols and symbolic patterns of relationships, it is necessary that they represent operational qualities. I trust that these statements will provoke a great deal of thought, and I will now summarize the important points. One must come to realize that symbols are the tools that thought uses. They provide the means for the translation of thought. They are the missing link in your thinking. Symbols work in both directions, from the physical level to the mental one, and vice versa. Thoughts originate on the mental level and will, in time, manifest as completed forms on the physical level. Physical things and objects and so forth are evolved thought forms. Their master blueprint still remains in the levels of thought. One can trace back from the physical to the original thought archetype. Some of your time should be devoted to this method of examining causes, for it will open new and fertile vistas of thinking. Symbols can be designed and arranged to represent new things and objects. The amount of thought force exerted on the higher levels determines how rapidly the translation from the mental to the physical takes place. Symbols can be arranged into working relationships so that mechanisms can operate in both the mental and physical levels at the same time. In this instance, the best symbols are those that resemble either the thought or mechanism in greatest detail. In the employment of mental telepathy, symbols and objects can be used, providing they possess the mental imprint of the particular individual to be communicated with. The mind establishes the tuning in and selection of an individual's unique thought patterns and frequency. Once the connection is firmly planted as a pattern of relationships and frequency in the mind of each party involved in the communication, the selective symbol is stored as a memory pattern. A symbol, therefore, allows the fixing of one's telepathic attention on the thoughts of the selected communicant. I would suggest that your people devote both time and effort to this phase of the tensor concepts. The results that you achieve will be in direct relationship to the effort you expend. One should remember there are no free passes to the realms of thought. This concludes this preliminary discussion on symbols. I trust these thoughts will be of value to you. I am Cortan, Adonai. Greetings in the light of the Radiant One. I am Soltec. When using the tensor concepts, we can say that at least one other part of your brain, which nobody uses even when thinking, can be in continuous operation for you. It is not an activity of your cerebral cortex or your gray matter. It is a submerged, every minute of the day activity, of which you are not conscious. We say that this new functioning is located in the 4/5 of your brain, for which no function is known at this time. It does not conform to any of the sensory wave responses that you know or recognize. In employing these techniques, you will be opening up new synapses, new impulse channels, from nerve cell to nerve cell. Many of them you have never used before, and they may still be in a highly primitive state. These individual synapses are just building blocks for two very general brain functions. The first that I would bring to your attention is that which you call ESP, or extrasensory perception, and the other is called psychokinesis, or telekinesis, or just PK for short. ESP helps you to detect things, objects, events, and thoughts. PK enables you to act upon them. All of the side effects, such as precognition, telepathy, clairvoyance, levitation, teleportation, and so on, are simply different manifestations of these two basic functions, just as colors are different manifestations of light. The first of these, ESP, is the more widely known one, but PK, the second, is just as important. In telepathy, then, you will find there is no analogy for sending and receiving, though your people may wish to use those terms for convenience. Telepathy is just one factor of your tensor-oriented brain and mind. It is a perception, not an action. It is as nearly passive as the detection of sound. A telepath perceives a thought as he would any other event in space-time. A mind which holds a thought does not need to send it, and if it were the mind of a non-telepath, it could never receive anything which did not come to it through the usual channels of the senses. Nevertheless, there is a principle by which telepathic attention can be focused on the desired thought. Our brother Corton mentioned this previously. Thought detecting is not limited by distance, nor is the range of a transmitted thought. Telepathic communication can operate throughout the universe, and such communication is instantaneous. Thoughts and their transmission and reception operate beyond the scope of the physical universe. They do not obey physical laws. However, they do obey the laws that exist in the dimension that thought occupies. Therefore, the mind transcends all that is physical in its operation. It is only the physical brain, the tool of your mind, that needs to be trained by the tensor concepts. Your mind already knows the techniques of the tensor concepts. The problem is in impressing them upon the physical brain. Once you have learned these concepts, you shall be admitted to the fraternity of man. In our future and continuing discussions of the tensor concepts, we will be exploring many of the various ways to assist you in this learning process. You may start by realizing that there is a mental continuum or dimension, but there is no psychic continuum, because what you on earth call psychic gifts are only the side effects of our previously mentioned fundamental traits, ESP and PK, each with a real existence in the universe. These faculties detect and move things in space and time, and are in turn detected and moved. You will soon start learning about the concept of an overlapping series of space-time plenta. The tensor faculties help you to pursue a single line of thought for any period of time. This many of you find difficult to do. An example I can quote is as follows. Our brother known as Corton is, at the moment, relaying my thoughts to you. However, at the same time, he is supervising some 7,000 thought transmissions in this your solar system and throughout this section of the galaxy. His ability, which is not unique, allows him at any moment in time to focus his mental attention on all or any one of these communications. In your present mental state, you are perhaps appalled at such a feat. However, all is possible in the realms of thought. Thought is an event occurring within that individuality of consciousness that is uniquely you. It occurs merely on a subtler level of awareness, one not far removed from the physical world. True, it is of a finer and subtler nature, and true, the abilities that one can exercise upon the levels of thought would seem truly miraculous to you who have only the orientation provided by your present mental environment. No thought shields exist, other than those created by an individual's field of thought. There is nothing in the physical universe that cannot be penetrated by a thought. The remote corners of the galaxies can be reached instantaneously by thought. One's physical body can, as well, be transported or teleported by the power of the mind anywhere in the universe, or, closer to home, anywhere about your planet. Your mind does not require the use of a physical vehicle to transport your body thusly. There is nothing else involved in this process other than your ability to mentally grasp the concept and the technique employed. One can as well see the future, visit the past, explore the present, and move about anywhere and everywhere at the command of thought and of the mind. One of the great handicaps which make it difficult for you to grasp this unlimited potential of the mind is your common belief that the mind is located inside your brain. Soon, via the tensor concepts, you will come to the realization that the mind exists outside and beyond that which you call the brain and your bodies. When this fact enters your awareness and is finally understood, you will have made a most important step in your training. The next hurdle is believing in your own ability to utilize your own mental potentials. Many of you cringe at the thought of receiving another's thoughts. Still others among you dislike the idea that others can receive your thoughts, as many of you harbor thoughts not worthy of your true being. True, as you master your telepathic abilities, you will learn how to create a thought shield. But before you all breathe a sigh of relief, please understand this. When you employ a thought shield, you are like a lighted beacon, calling yourself to the attention of every telepath near you. One of the toughest lessons you are going to learn is that of cleaning up your thoughts and disposing of all that is unworthy of the light within you. None among you will enter your new age using a thought shield. When I make the statement that the majority on your planet are already utilizing minds that are shielded, you will wonder why this is so. One of the side effects of the detrimental radiation received from your sun has caused a gene mutation. This has been passed on from parents to offspring. However, the new radiations now being received by all on your planet will cause your handicap to disappear. Such additional training you receive through the tensor concepts will also help dissipate your present thought shields. In the past, some among you were able to dispose of these thought shields. Those who accomplished this were considered the great sages of their time. You see, a shield works both ways. It prevents your thoughts from being received, but it also prevents you from receiving thoughts from the source of all enlightenment. Now perhaps you will understand why we seldom encounter a shielded mind. People of Earth, you must come to the realization that your planet is changing. As it enters what many have called a new age, you must change as well. As your telepathic abilities develop, you will become exposed to and receive the thoughts emanating from highly advanced minds. Those on other worlds have experienced the learning of great truths. Your questing mind, once it looses its telepathic probing of the mental levels of awareness, will encounter the thoughts of many advanced minds. We, your brothers in space, and many other beings, even more advanced than we are waiting to welcome you. As our brother Hatan once said, a reunion many of us have waited for. None among us employ a thought shield. You are welcome to share that which we have learned, for you will be recognized as a brother, a member of the creation called man. At this point, I will conclude these thoughts for the moment on the subject of telepathy. I shall appreciate the privilege of sharing additional such thoughts as we present the continuing tensor concepts. I shall leave you with this thought. Physically, you and I are separated by vast distances in space and time, but mentally, we are but a thought apart. I am Soltec. Adonai, my brothers and sisters. Adonai.
Greetings in the light of the Radiant One. I am Soltec. My brothers and sisters, that which I would bring to your attention at this time is a brief history of the tensor concepts on your planet. The tensor concepts have been called by many names in their history upon your planet. Currently, one of them is extrasensory perception, but for a short time it had been known as psionics, or psi for short. Previous to this, it had been thought by many of your ancient peoples to have been what many called magic. The medicine man of your early times, with the oxide that he used for paint, with his knuckle bones to rattle in a skull, and his bag of nauseous content, may have practiced it in a clumsy sort of way before the first word was ever spoken. He was grasping at principles he did not understand. He more than likely did not even know that he did not understand, not realizing there was anything he ought to understand. Knowledge such as this was passed on from hand to inept hand. The witch doctors of your Congo used it. The priests of Egypt knew of it. The wise men of Tibet were acquainted with it. In all of these cases, it has not been wisely used because it has not been understood. It has gotten mixed up with a lot of confusion. In the days of so-called reason, it became discredited, and there was scarcely anyone who believed in it. However, out of this primitive reasoning rose a method and a science. There was no place for the magic of the tensor concepts in a world that science built, for there was no method in it, and there was no system in it. It could not be reduced to formulas or equations at that time that your scientists could handle or understand. So it was considered suspect, as it was outside the pale of what was considered normal. Stupid foolishness, it was called. No man in his right mind in those times would even consider it. In your present time, it is called PK, meaning paranormal kinetics. Thus, the history of the tensor concepts on your planet has been a strange one, for despite the gulf
which lay between psychokinesis and science. It has taken the orderly mind which science has drummed into your human race to make PK finally work. It has been necessary on your planet that science should come first. Science had to be developed before men could understand the forces which freed his mind from the shackles in which it had been bound. Your science has therefore been the training ground in which organized thinking and method was developed. There have been those who have said that two roads in some distant past had forked for the men and women of your planet. One of these paths had been marked magic, and the other science. The men and women of your planet, the Earth, had taken the science road and let the magic go. Many of these people then went on to say that men had made a great mistake in the choosing of these roads. But those who made these statements had to be wrong, for there have never been two roads. There have only been the one road. Men had to master science before they could discover the disciplines of the tensor concepts. In your past, you were fortunate to have stubborn men who refused to give up their dreams of the stars. Men who were willing to brave the laughter of their world and their fellows, who would accept the challenge if only they could go out to the stars. Men on your planet in the remote past had gone to the stars by using the tensor concepts without the benefit of machines or the worship of technology. Today, machines and technology and science itself still exist and are still in daily use and are still of vast importance. But in your future times, they will no longer form a cult. In your coming of age, you will still have use of and need of machines. However, they will not be machines that can presently be accepted by the common mass of mankind upon your planet. They will have no pistons, no wheels, no gears, no shafts, no levers, and no buttons. They will have nothing of the component parts of a commonplace machine, and they will certainly seem very strange and alien. Men on your planet will then lose their cultural hero, the machine. The machine has, for men on your planet, represented a form of abstract hero worship, for men have always needed ideals and goals, and thus a vacuum will exist in this area. The tensor concepts can fill this vacuum exactly, for here at last is the promise of an ultimate fulfillment. Here is something exotic enough to satisfy the depth of human emotions, such as no mere machine has ever been able to do. You may find in your future travel to the stars a type of machine. A symbolic one will be used. One that frees the mind and even gives your mind a boost in the right direction. It will be a way of getting there, of knowing where you are going, and once you understand it, once you get the feel of it, it will be clear and simple, and it becomes a part of you. It will be as natural as your breathing, and it will not require you to use what you call a spaceship. As you learn to employ the tensor concepts, you will develop a new mental capacity. First, there are the simple things, the easy things to be learned and applied. However, you will go on from there. You will grow. Some, however, stop growing after a time, while others keep on growing. In each individual, these abilities will not be separate abilities. The abilities themselves are simply manifestations of a wholeness of your minds. They are lumped together, the mind working as it always should have worked, even from the very first, if it had had its chance. There will be many among your people who do not trouble to learn these new concepts, who will be more than just envious. Perhaps you will see the terror and the hate and the envy of the uninitiate. You will feel perhaps the frustrations of those who have been left out, or the intolerance and the smuggery of those who have refused to understand. But you need have no fear, for these are the rear guard of what we will call your old order, holding a narrow pass against your outflanking of the future. Regarding now this topic of psychokinesis, it appears to be one of the highest forms of activity in the human brain, and you will find it extremely tiring if you keep at it for long stretches of time. What happens is this. The electrons in your brain that are affected are first your own, in the cells of your own brain. You visualize a cloud of electrons swirling in the forefront of your brain. You then project that resulting field that you just created onto whatever object that you wish to move, since obviously you do not want to teleport the insides of your skull. The cloud of electrons in a swirling field of force affect the gravitational field of the object, reducing the field. The result of this exercise is that which you call levitation. In your initial efforts in the use of PK, or telekinesis, you will be using what is described in your science as the Blackett effect. I will go into this in more detail in a moment. Returning to the exercise I previously described, once an object is levitated, it will be drifting aloft. At this point, other forces requiring only a minimal amount of mental control will act upon the object. The first of these is that known as Coriolis, which will cause the object to move slowly in a lateral plane. Centrifugal force will keep the object aloft as long as you are maintaining the gravity field at zero. In developing your PK faculties, it will be necessary for you to try and think of nothing at all, to empty the mind of everything possible. Your preliminary use in the early stages of the thalamic cortical pause mentioned in one of our earlier discussions will aid in relaxing and emptying the mind. This is difficult to achieve because there are always fugitive images and washes of faded emotions over which many of you have no control. At the moment when you believe you have achieved mental relaxation, that is the moment to try the exercise. These exercises will be activating new areas of your brains, and eventually the new synaptical connections within your brains to these areas will make contact with your cerebral cortex. Now to a technical and mathematical discussion of the process taking place. One of the great scientists in your past, by the name of Heisenberg, developed what he called probability packets. Your mathematicians may take an approach to this as a problem in matrix calculus involving the previously mentioned Heisenberg probability packets. They should take the trouble to locate the original Heisenberg interdeterminacy formula. Your scientists, as well as yourselves, will find that this new activity in your brains as a whole may be that of an infinitely overlapping group of what are called Fourier functions, in which the nerve impulses play the part of dynamic variables. Therefore, the quantity h in the formula can change value at a constant rate from one time frame to another. It is, in fact, the difference which keeps the frames separated from each other. This you may classify as a timing principle. One of the methods we employ in detecting tensor-oriented individuals and potential individuals among your people is that for a long time we have known that the behavior of electrons in your mind betrays a certain kind of thought. By this I do not mean that electrons are sentient, but simply that their behavior is analogous to that of sentient creatures. Everything two of your early scientists, Dirac and Heisenberg, and their colleagues have done on electron motion and position show, for the want of a more applicable term, that which is thought. Our examination of your scientific concepts shows that the early thinking of your Earth scientist named Niels Bohr was correct. He postulated a wave atom, and this atom, in effect, has a psychology of its own. This your scientists would find useful in initial studies of the behavior of mobs. We find that this wave atom electronic psychology is mirrored in human behavior. This behavior, again, we classify as mob action. And secondly, what your scientists have termed schizoid behavior. We believe that most forms of schizophrenia represent a splitting of the personality into both tensor and non-tensor groups, sometimes dozens of them in the same individual's brain. The tensor-oriented groups become totally divorced from all cortical activity and live in the tensor centers of the brain exclusively. The cortical groups develop voluntary activity, unmodified by any tensor control or even any access to it. Theoretically, this kind of disassociation can go on until there is nothing left of a personality at all. Your scientists will find the basic tensor telekinesis equation to be identical with a formula well known in your physics, although not recognized as such. This formula is called the Blackett equation, and it is not at all esoteric to certain of your scientists. I would interrupt my comments at this time to state that I am requesting that a printed transcript of this communication be made available to your peoples, so that the mathematical formulas I have described will be apparent to all. Resuming now our discussion. A magnetic field is a product of an object's rotation on an axis, and gravity is a function of it. Remember, every electron is a tiny electromagnet. What is important to grasp in this matter is that the figures in the formula merely explain what is happening. However, it is the relationship between them that must be grasped. Therefore, it is not necessary to know the math to accomplish levitation, only to explain its workings. Always remember that it takes an actual expenditure of energy to move or levitate any object, whether you use telekinesis or you pick it up and throw it. In any event, you are expending energy and great amounts of it. In order to explain the more complex action of forces involved in teleportation and higher-order pK, we must once again refer to the Heisenberg formula. In examining this formula, your scientists will discover that the left-hand side of the equation can be discounted, since only the right-hand side gives it meaning, and the expression is not reversible. The sign I in the formula is a definite numerical quantity and hence not truly a variable. The same is true of the quantity pi. Therefore, this leaves nothing but h, the Planck constant, and it is a constant. Let us discuss this for a moment. Planck's constant, as your scientists visualize it, is described as an invariant element in a quantum, the single indivisible packet of energy on which the universe is postulated to operate. Can you imagine that if this basic constant were to change, that the entire energy level of the universe would change with it? Therefore, in the tensor-oriented man, the mind tunes to different values of the Planck constant, and thus is achieved that which is called telekinesis. In simple terms, you are going to learn how to tune your minds to these different values represented by the Planck constant. In so doing, you are not changing the energy level of the cosmos, but utilizing a non-material form of mental energy, which can draw upon a limitless source. The mind therefore acts as a type of converter for this force. It is important to realize that the mind itself is not supplying this energy, but is merely channeling an already existent force that is ever present throughout the universe. One can therefore teleport any object, or even oneself, anywhere in the universe at the command of your own thought. I would suggest, however, that you confine your experiments to known locales upon your planet to start with, until you have a complete mental realization of the environmental factors on other worlds. The human physical structure that you possess requires very precise conditions in terms of environment in order to exist. Later, as you develop more advanced exercises and abilities in the manipulation of matter, you will be able to create your own environment wherever you happen to be. I would present for your consideration at this time a topic entitled The Serial Universe. Any discussion of the universe must as well consider the topic of time. What we are about to discuss is preliminary information. Many of your scientists would find it a mistake to proceed by thinking of the levels of the serial universe as independent parallel existences, for it is easy to accept the concept of parallel universes. Let us use an analogy to illustrate the serial universe concept. Imagine that the stream of time is divided up into an indefinite number of equal segments, very similar to individual frames in a motion picture film. In one such strip of film, the actors and the props in each frame would be two-dimensional and would not seem very real. However, by laying another strip directly on the top of the first one, running in the same direction, the actors and the props in the second strip are almost the same as those in the first, but not quite identical. They too are two-dimensional and nearly unreal. Now if you add a third strip to the pile, slightly different from the second strip and more markedly different from the first strip, and repeat the process with a fourth, fifth, sixth, a seventh, and so on. Now if one brings a light and looks through the piled strips at a single frame, a single instant of time as it exists in each of the levels of the serial universe would be seen. No single image shows through. Instead you see a composite. The slightly differing, mostly unreal and flat objects and actors add up to three-dimensional images, standing in the three-dimensional space, bounded by the edges of the pile of film strips. The composite images, therefore, partake of the characteristics of all of the individual images. This seemingly solid composite, then, would represent the world, with the additive effects of all the levels of the serial universe. The main line of reality, as distinct from the contributing individual sequences. But since your term sequence suggests time and motion, you will note there is a progression and change from frame to frame in each of the piled film strips. Here, then, is their secret. The recondite core of the serial universe is the difference in time. If one places a hand on the top of the piled film strips and presses down, then moves the hand forward half an inch, the top strip slides. The one just under it slides a little less, the strip under that still less, and the bottom strip may not move at all. But when you now hold the light up to the piled strips again, you will see that the discrepancy between the frames in the top strip and those in the bottom one is serious. The instant which is the now on the bottom strip has been moved forward in time a considerable distance in the top strip. If one keeps in mind the concept of the present now as one frame on the bottom strip, one can therefore obviously move mentally from one frame to the next, in the same strip, or to the frames in other strips. But one should keep in mind that in the physical universe, even as short a time duration as 1 second equals enormous distances of equivalent motion. Stated simply, when you move 1 second ahead in time, you have just made a journey in some direction of 186,000 miles. One should therefore not experiment with this concept until one has learned the correct tensor techniques. Perhaps when pursuing and studying this concept of time, one will discover there is the possibility of a main line of time. One should also be careful to realize that if the strips were to become separated, one could find himself in different probabilities of time that are not quite on the main line of time, but rather somewhat parallel to it. At this point, we must briefly discuss your term predestination. If one says that all events are fixed, and then have to happen the way they do happen, then that is your definition of this term. But this is a cortical way of looking at it. If you insist on thinking in cortical terms, then that is what you would have to call it. However, you should understand that it is not a rigid linear series with events falling 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead, I would like you to envisage an infinite series of overlapping event levels, each of them keyed to some point or some sort of decision point. You will find that there is plenty of room for the operation of your free will. Referring to the movie film example previously stated, you may think of the operation of your free will as a big pile of movie films, all of them stacked lengthwise on top of each other. They all have almost exactly the same sets in the pictures, but the frames all overlap each other a bit, and you, the leading character, have permission to shift from strip to strip. In working with the entire range of PK phenomena, your scientists will be able to trace the new functionings of your physical brains by using what you term a tracer element. This is a form of tracer chemistry, an outgrowth of your atomic research.
you will discover that the element ecocesium has an affinity for the subcortical Golgi bodies in your brains, just as you have discovered that iodine has an affinity for the cells of your thyroid glands. X-ray plates, after one has received an injection of the element ecocesium, if placed against the forehead, will show the new activities in the tensor centers of the brain that are activated. Thus, my brothers and sisters, we have presented some preliminary thoughts on the subject of telekinesis and the serial universe for your consideration. I have requested that a printed transcript of this particular treatise be made available for your pupils to study. I am Soltec. Adonai, my brothers and sisters of earth. Adonai.